Books are friends. By this logic, I have a lot of friends. But a personal book collection or library is like a well-tended garden. Except books and their authors can talk to you a lot more specifically than plants can. Today I'm going to highlight 5 books that have stayed with me over the decades, my book best friends, if you will, that continue to speak to you and you can pick up whenever you want. You're never really finished with them. The theme of this video, or at least the forever reads aspect of it, is inspired by one of my favorite booktube creators, Leonie, or the book Leo. I'll link her video below. And she was, in turn, inspired by a book talk creator. So on it goes. The idea that books are friends is a quote from my dad, who has found books to be friends for many decades, starting in the 1950s. So I'm actually a bit jealous that he was around for the golden age of science fiction and many more significant events, both in real life and literature. Now let's get into the choices. The first is The Tale of Peter Rabbit, because, of course, this is where my lore started in rural Maritimes, Canada. I didn't have cable for the first 5 years of my life, which you wouldn't think is significant, but it wasn't that much different than any other, I don't know, Canadian or English child. My friends were Peter Rabbit, Winnie the Pooh, Frog and Toad, just characters from classic children's literature. Beatrix Potter I found to have stayed with me the longest because she, of course, was an author, illustrator, conservationist. My love of ecology, nature, cute animals, merchandise. Peter Rabbit was actually the first licensed character. So, I mean, I love licensed characters, again, as we'll see from the next pick as well. But shouts to Beatrix Potter. You can see that I had a mug. I had a lot of dishes in my childhood as well. I didn't have these editions because these are from, I think, the 2000s. There's a box set that I'll show here of all of her characters and stories as these little books. So a newer interpretation of these books, a bit brighter and clearer than the originals, but they still have all the text and illustrations that you would expect, and all the charm and accessibility are still there. So fast forward to my later childhood and teen years, I now have access to television, which is significant for my reading habits, actually. I had YTV, which is youth television, a classic Canadian institution. I loved all the teams, but of course the best team, and the one that I was hooked on since I saw clips of this in an early episode before school one day, and I'm like, oh my goodness, what is this? I need to be part of whatever this is. And it's Sailor Moon. I've mentioned Sailor Moon a few times on this channel, mostly as a fashion inspiration, but also a personal inspiration. The manga series is written and illustrated by Naoko Takeuchi. As far as I can tell, the cartoon, the anime, and the comic ran concurrently in the 90s. The comic or manga has a bit of a different feel. It's a little bit more serious, a little more contemplative. It still has humor and cuteness, of course, but the action moves a lot quicker. It doesn't have quite as much filler, which, of course, the TV show is like a classic Monster of the Week show where there's a monster every week. Much like Beatrix Potter, Naoko is a inspiration to me as a female creator. Also, her world, populated by dozens and dozens of female characters who are superheroes and ancient moon princesses and future moon queens, and there's a whole lot of mythology and fun and shenanigans that happen. But yeah, I have this and the first, I don't know, half dozen volumes of this in the Kodansha series, and I return to them fairly often for art inspiration and just kind of life inspiration. So, Sailor Moon. The third book is Against Nature by Jurie Carl Huysmans. I'm only going to try to say that once. So French and Japanese, basically non-English, even sometimes English, beyond me, despite all the things that I read. But yeah, so the backstory on this is that I was pretty obsessed with the Victorian writers and artists in my high school and college years. My favorite and still favorite being Oscar Wilde. So the Oscar Wilde lore related to this book is that this book, also called Our Boar, sometimes translated as Against the Grain, is the book that corrupts Dorian Gray in The Picture of Dorian Gray. Of course, it's not mentioned in terms of the title or very specific passages. It's fictionalized somewhat. But hey, it's right here in chapter 10. So what's the original story? Basically, it's about a fellow named Desistance, who's a Frenchman, who lives in a very isolated, decadent world of his own creation, where artificial things are much more important to him than real experiences, although he's quite enamored with sensuous experiences as well. Now, my friends and family thought it was very funny that me, being a pretty serious, non-outgoing person in my high school and college years, was obsessed with people who were like decadent and wild and symbolist and artificial. But I mean, you can't choose what you find interesting. So I guess I find this interesting. But this is one of the books that I do pick up and read. Desistance, we salute you. We love all of your adventures and non-adventures. I'll put a couple of like delicious quotes up for you to peruse. And I would recommend this as in public domain, so definitely check it out because it's from 1884. Oh my goodness, so actually 100 years before I was born. Wow, what a fun coincidence. And we're destined to find one another through time. Fourth is actually the same time period, more or less, of my life, which was the 90s, 2000s. I think my formative years, the most formative years, mostly this is true in people's lives, especially if they go to college, what they read in college stays with them. Despite the ridiculous cover, I don't know where this copy came from. It's only the first book. There's like a trilogy that I would have read the trilogy. So this contains a worldview that at the time and still today I subscribe to, which is Taoism, but like Taoism clearly like westernized and fantasized as not like that specific spiritual tradition, but kind of a worldview of balance and equilibrium. This is so prescient of so many things. Even the trend I'm seeing in fantasy right now of having kind of a antagonist who lives in your head or is your kind of Jungian reflection that's in this book. There's a wizard school. He goes to a wizard school. I mean, I don't need to say that maybe there's another series that came later that maybe employed that same trope and gets a little bit too much credit for popularizing it. And also Jed is able to finish his wizard training at school within one book. It doesn't take 7 books. So anyway, obviously he has more adventures, but he's done school. It has a magic system where names or true names have power, which again is used in innumerable fantasy books where knowing somebody's true name or essence gives you power over them. Ursula K. Le Guin is my favorite female author. She's written science fiction, fantasy, poetry, essays, lots of things, but her worldview and the way she thinks about language and culture, I find resonates with me quite a lot. So I would recommend any of her work, but this is also one that you'll discover a lot of things that appear later in fantasy that it's just so influential that I think it's probably underrated in terms of, I hear her science fiction talked about a lot because she is held up as an important female science fiction writer. Seemingly there aren't enough of those to talk about, but there's more female fantasy writers, but she's still among the best and most influential. And that's one of the reasons I return to this book and this specific little paperback all the time. The last book is nonfiction. It's the first one that isn't a novel or a comic or a licensed property. Of course, I read at least half, if not mostly, nonfiction. So, of course, I want to put that in. So we have The Romance of American Communism by Vivian Gornick. Now, she is clearly sympathetic to American communists. She's actually more of a second wave feminist writer. That's where she politically situates herself. She wrote this book for feminists at that time to not perhaps fall into some of the same traps, movement dead ends that American communism did. Now, when we talk about communism, we're talking about the Communist Party of the USA, and mostly in the 30s and 40s. The book does eventually wind up into the 60s and 70s. There's an important moment where Khrushchev's speech forces a lot of American communists to either go into hiding or just abandon the project. But this book is, I must mention, was read with my book club. So the real book friends are not, of course, the books, but they are the voices that you get access to through reading. And your book friends, of course, can also be your fellow readers, the people that you connect with through books. So I'm very fortunate to have been a member of a book club, a left-wing book club. This is my personal favorite pick of the books that we've read together. And it's fitting because it is about a shared project or vision that unites people. And there's so many just wonderful stories, anecdotes, descriptive pieces of writing that it is very true to the title. It is a romance, but not in the romance of like two people meet and fall in love, but like a romantic idea that you can be part of. I think the quote that resonates with me the most from one of it's an oral history, so one of the interview subjects is that communism allowed that person to find a home within themselves. So it's like, I don't know how you can express being part of something better than that. And this is a great testament to the power of being part of something, but also as Vivian says, is also like, it didn't work. I don't know how to tell you this, but the Communist Party USA is not the most popular political party in the USA right now. The oral history of the movement is the thing that humanizes it and gives the reason that you would follow this ideology or project or community meaning. So I don't think you can ask more of a book than that. So anyway, what are your books that you return to over and over again and never quite finish? It could be 1, it could be 5, it could be as many as you like. Definitely share them down below with the comments, and let's keep the community going.